Good day, friends. Nayaswami Hriman here on a cloudy, overcast day here at the Crystal Hermitage. At the Camino Hermitage. And I'd like to play to you my favorite Nayaswami chant. I am strong in myself, I am free. Let's see. Hang on. My machine went to sleep. Here we go. Strong in myself, I am free. Complete in myself, I seek thee. In pleasure or pain, come loss or come gain, be praised or be blamed, I remain just the same. For nothing and no one is mine. For anger nor pride have I time. I seek God alone, only thee. In thy love and thy joy I am free. I seek God alone, only thee. In thy love and thy joy I am free. I am strong in myself, I am free. Okay, Whispers from Eternity. Today's reading from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda is a shorter one than last Friday. Teach us to consider no work more important than thy work. O Spirit, as no work is possible without borrowing from thee the power to perform it, so teach us to consider no work greater than thy spiritual work. Teach us to feel that since no duty is possible without thee, so no duty is more important than our duty to thee. And teach us to love thee above everything, for we cannot live or love anything or anybody without thy life and thy law. Well, that pretty much says a lot right there. On the subject of what is our duty in life, what is our dharma, as we say in the Eastern tradition, inspired and based on Sanskrit, is this prayer demand saying everyone should have a religious vocation? No work is more important than thy work? Well, no, of course not, because we each have a different matrix of karma and things we need to do. So no, it's also not to deny the blessing of the good karma to give oneself to a religious vocation, to serving and sharing the teachings of one's guru, of one's faith, tradition, etc. And human history is filled with millions of people who have dedicated their lives towards finding God, towards serving, etc. So there's no point denying that. However, it wouldn't be much of a point for billions of people on the planet today or at any time in human history to make that the priority, because it's simply not feasible. We need farmers, we need craftspeople, we need teachers, we need leaders, we need even bureaucrats. So really what we're saying is to understand, because the second part of the prayer demand essentially says it, which is to understand that our very life, our very capacity to love, our very desire to love or be loved, our very ambition to do this or do that, our very need to support ourselves, that life itself is a gift of God. Life itself is God, according to the metaphysical teachings of Advaita Vedanta. All is God. God made this great universe, you and me, all things, out of himself, herself, itself, whatever you like. But I'd like to segue a little bit because this weekend was an important weekend for our Sangha here in Bothell. Padma and I conducted our annual Kriya initiation, the Kriya technique of meditation and the path of Kriya as a faith tradition is the essence of the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda and the lineage who sent him to the West in 1920. And also I had Sunday service on the topic of prayer. I chose not yesterday at that service to talk about the national headlines of who won the presidential election, at least so far. Well, it's not over yet, but in any case, I chose not to. On the subject of politics, it's never been a strong interest of mine, particularly, though I do follow it and I have my opinions, as I'm sure you do. But I think the real message isn't who won, though I'm happy that Mr. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won. I think that's significant. But I doubt it's as significant as many people would like to believe. It is significant in this sense that the tide of awakening, the tide of heart opening consciousness, the tide of inclusivity was at least sufficient to overcome its opposite or other forces and influences. And so that bespeaks well. But I, for one, based on the teachings of Yogananda Ji and the insights of his line of teachers, which tell us that we are in an expanding phase of human consciousness, although some days it sure doesn't seem so, but nonetheless, it's true. You don't have to look very far to see open hearts and minds that see the vast vista of creation, whether in the macro, in the micro, as a growing, expanding light, as an expanding, more and more people see things this way. And technology itself is bringing us together. So, yes, I'm hopeful. But I do think that America, at least, and presumably other countries as well, but I think those of us who live in America must, in fact, brace ourselves for the inevitable crash of breaking worlds, because America karma, though Yogananda said is basically good, because we're basically good people, nonetheless, we have many lessons to learn and errors to correct. The very election itself, the very election of a person of low consciousness who currently occupies the White House. No matter what else you may think of what he represents or stands for, all I'm interested in is consciousness. And I know the divine can use even low consciousness to accomplish what needs to happen. And I think that is what's going on. I think the low consciousness that has inhabited our government, at least our White House, is helping people to wake up and choose how they identify themselves and our nation in terms of our principles, our ideals, and how we treat other people. So great. Divine Mother, as we like to say, uses even evil, uses even suffering as a prod to get souls one by one to wake up. Still, in terms of economics, in terms of pandemic, in terms of many different things, climate change and catastrophic events, I sometimes think about my grandchildren. They're sweet kids, I guess, but whew, boy, they're going to go to hell and back, I think, in terms of history in the 21st century. 21st century belongs to the Orient, belongs to Asia, China and India and other countries as well. And so Americans were resisting the reality that we are no longer the top dog, or will at some point not be the top dog. I think that's good for us. We've been far too proud. We need some humility, but it doesn't much matter. It's going to happen anyway. We would do well to embrace the green revolution, to embrace new ways of thinking, new technologies, and we will, because we will have no choice. But because we refuse to take up the obvious changes that are needed to embrace one another regardless of race or religion, because we are, what's the word, holding your feet or dragging our feet into the 21st century, we will thereby suffer accordingly. I think in the end, and partly because Yogananda said it was so, I think in the end, America will remain strong and prosperous and a place of security. But when? Not in my lifetime, I don't think. Still, I'm hopeful. I see so many good things happening, even during this pandemic. People thinking more for themselves, thinking more about what's a priority in their lives. And even if that includes being tempted to be a little bit selfish, nonetheless, I don't see that. I see people reaching out and helping one another. I'm very optimistic. But I think my fellow Americans, as President Nixon would say, I think my fellow Americans, we need to brace ourselves. We need to take our destiny in our hands, which is to say, God's hands, to attune ourselves, as this prayer demand says, first and foremost, to the source of life, to God in whatever name, faith, tradition, religion, gender, in whatever way is sincere and deeply meaningful to you. We need to embrace our relationship to a higher power and use that consciously, intelligently, not to inflict it on other people, but not to hide our bushel, our light under a bushel, okay? And to find other people who feel as you do, because this is a time for people to come together. We're going to need to solve our issues, our problems, one by one, city by city, state by state, because the federal government, friends, in case you don't know it, is totally broke. Even if Biden had command of the legislature, not going to happen. All the socialist kinds of things that many of my friends, and probably you, would like to see happen, not going to happen. We're broke. Get over it. Build for yourself relationships and a way of life that's based on simplicity, a way of life that's based on faith, a way of life that includes other people with whom you feel in harmony. This is how we will weather the storms that are coming. So congratulations, Joe and Kamala. I wish you the best. It's going to be a tough road for you, I'm afraid, but we're behind you to a point. I'm conservative in my values. I don't really want the government to give me any handouts, but that's me. I'd rather do it myself. Okay, folks, you won't get too many political speeches from me, but you got one today. All right, joy to y'all. You'll see Padma tomorrow. She's a lot sweeter, but she's a lot more political.